Well, hello and good morning. Happy Wednesday, hump day, all that fun stuff. We are here on Wednesday, March 30th, and today we're going to be diving into part 3 of this 5-part series where we are talking about really bad relationships, really bad aspects, narcissistic sociopaths, psychopaths, emotional abusers, physical abusers, all of this kind of thing. And we're segueing into the next 2 days where we're going to be now also covering what to do. What do you do after that? How do you mend from it? How do you get past it? So we're about to kick off here. Miss Merrily, always lovely to see you. Everybody watching out in TV land on YouTube and so forth, glad to have you. My YouTube channel has kind of been a testing ground and so forth, but I've been fairly pleased of the amount of people that actually go and have been watching some of the replays and stuff. So thank you for that, guys. And so I'm going to dive in here. Now I'm going to be sitting in here with you for a hot minute. I do have a special guest that was going to be here with me today, and sadly, they have COVID. They have been extremely sick, and they were going to try to still pop on to the show this morning, but it's going to be kind of up to if they're going to be really feeling like it. So if they're not able to make it today, we are going to be doing kind of a recapture because they really wanted to share their story. But sadly, they're battling COVID, so may not be able to have them on the show here today. Stephanie, welcome. Good to see you. So let's dive in here. This is part 3. This is part 3 of a 5-part series, and today, Monday and Tuesday, we've been kind of talking about. I was focused more on the narcissistic sociopath and just the true narcissist, and that's sadly something that's far too common in relationship dynamics, and it's usually one of the catalysts whenever you're dealing with an abusive relationship. Today we're gonna go up a level. Now we're going to be talking about the actual psychopath, and there are several variants of psychopathy. I had to laugh this morning because I was going over my notes and checking my article and so forth, and the more times you say psychopathy, the more you start to stumble and wondering if you're saying it right. So everybody says it differently. I've had some people that say psychopathy. I do not. It's psychopathy. But anyway, you say it however you want. It's kind of like saying Worcestershire. Nobody's really sure how to say it. So bear with me. You'll probably hear me stumble over this a couple of times. But this show, I'm hoping, will help those who are either suffering or have suffered in relationships with a true psychopath. This is also one of those areas where I can tell you I speak from experience, and it's one of the most unhealthy scenarios that you could actually be in. So let's dive in here. We learn about others and ourselves through our intimate relationship experiences. So what if an experience was traumatic, left behind psychological scars that require healing or professional intervention? This is the reality for many who have found themselves in an intimate relationship with an actual psychopath. Now, psychopathy is such a commonly used word online and in media, making the symptoms for the general public kind of ambiguous. And psychopathy is a disorder related to specific faulty brain functions. Okay, a few such areas include, here we go, we're going to get scientific a little bit, but include the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, and the anterior cingulate cortex. Now, what that means is it affects a lot of parts of your brain, people. And let's address some basics. Psychopathy is a deeply ingrained constellation of personality traits and behaviors. And the symptoms reflect an emotional processing disorder with a very strong genetic foundation. So the condition makes up approximately 1 to 2% of the population and is present in both sexes, although kind of unevenly. Now, one thing I want to point out here is that when we look at the emotional processing disorder, well, your baseline your baseline narcissist, okay, like a true narcissist, a sociopath, it's the same premise in that scope, is that with them, they're missing that part of the brain that can actually operate in a compassionate, empathetic kind of level, where they actually care if they do something wrong. Psychopathy goes even higher, to where it's void of several areas that, even where that person even has the ability or even has the awareness sometimes of if they're being kind, if they're causing damage to somebody, if you're intentionally causing harm. A psychopath doesn't care. They don't care. Now, this is a very complex condition, okay? Some of the things that kind of fall in here is a specific underlying neurological dysfunction, okay? A range of intensity, like on a continuum or a spectrum. I mean, there's a very wide range. Positive symptoms, adaptability, ability to conceal, dark traits, these are natural. It's like a natural thing that gets kind of born in there. And then the presence of subtypes. This is where we're going to get into primary and secondary. Psychopaths are prone to interact through manipulation and to use others for their sole benefit. Even if this creates pain and devastation for the target, they don't care. Extending love and care to them will not impact the expression of pathology from the psychopathic partner. Like, you're never gonna get a psychopath to genuinely be on a different page with you. That's a meaningful, caring, loving page. It's not going to happen. Now, the vast symptoms of this condition include some of these traits: a lack of or minimal empathy, callousness, manipulation, pathological lying, very charming, tendency toward boredom, most times arrogance, blame shifting, dominance, aggression, impulsivity. In companies, individuals with psychopathy can orchestrate the loss of jobs, turn people against each other, divide a team. Same is true when you have this within a family. Within intimate relationships, they can leave partners and family members struggling with the impact of trauma, betrayal, abuse, potentially lasting years after they're gone. And it's important to know that psychopathy is a condition on a spectrum, okay? There's a gradient or a range. Like, some individuals with psychopathy they're more disordered than others, The evidence indicates that there are two variants of psychopathy. And this is what I mentioned before: primary and secondary. Now, the core symptoms tend to be present in both variants, but it is suspected that the underlying etiology is completely different. So, those considered primary psychopaths have the symptoms that we typically associate, okay? They're emotionally, underreactive, they lack anxiety, have very high narcissism. It's a narcissistic sociopath on steroids, okay? And research correlates that this form of psychopathy with a genetic foundation is what kind of sets into place with the primary, okay? This suggests that it is unlikely that mistreatment during their childhood was the primary contributor to their affective deficits. Okay, there's a biological predisposition to this neurodevelopment condition. Now, conversely, those with secondary psychopathy tend to be emotionally reactive and tense individuals. Now, this form of psychopathy is typically described as emotionally dysregulating, anxious, And studies support that past trauma, abuse, and environmental factors are highly correlated with this form of psychopathy. So some researchers do not really consider secondary truly psychopathic at all. The secondary is kind of shifted down, but it is there, and you can form those kind of traits based on your upbringing, based on that environment. And even within these variants, okay, one will often exhibit two sides or two faces. So, for example, many individuals appearing charming, exciting, loaded with charisma in public, and people might feel drawn to them, finding their magnetic personality and achievements just admirable. But at home, these same individuals may instill fear, causing those who love them most to walk on eggshells in attempts to avoid their, hair trigger temper. You know, so I want to go in now to what are the obstacles to a safe and happy relationship. Aside from problems such as just minimal empathy, antagonism, manipulation, anger, there are a few additional factors that hinder safe relationships. One is minimal capacity to bond. You may think that you've formed something with this person, but it's all fake. It's a facade. I've mentioned this before, even with a relationship with a narcissistic sociopath. You're a character in their play, and they're writing that story every day, through every circumstance, through every challenge. They're making sure that they stay in their control seat, and this is even more so with a psychopath. Number two is at the beginning of their intimate relationship, they are typically excited, stimulated by their new partner. This state can easily be mistaken as bonding and deep caring for their mate. However, this tends to be just kind of the dopamine-driven stage of romantic love, and, well, that can feel addictive, attractive, all those things. And once that fades, so does their interest. And it's often at this point that they're going to display the disdain. This is where you start to see the negative impact. This is where you start to see the darker side coming out, Next, you have dysfunctional relationship cycle. I mean, most times you're going to look back at the history of a psychopath. There is nothing that's long-standing and worthwhile. There's nothing sitting there that's screaming, stable. It's very unstable, very scattered. Number four, they often demonstrate a predictable cycle style of intimate relationships. Like I was saying, they're common for those, And they idealize, devalue, and then discard their partners with no concern for the pain that they leave behind. Given that they never had a bond with their mate in the first place, walking away from the relationship causes them very little to no discomfort. Many are happy to move along to the next target, particularly if they left their former person in the loser position, And that's the thing. Let's drain you out emotionally, physically. Let's exhaust every possible benefit that you have. And now I have no use. I'll move on. If you're sad and brokenhearted, don't really care. Because you don't have anything that I can take anymore. I've taken it all. So it's done. So we're going to move on. And that's the mentality. Next is inability to offer just a genuine apology. Remember that part of the brain does not function the same as those of us with conscience, with compassion, with empathy, with a heart. It doesn't exist. So they don't have that ability. So if you ever get yeah, I'm sorry. There's nothing behind it, people. It's void. It's void. It's empty. Psychopathy is a disorder that hampers the ability to feel guilt and remorse. So due to faulty brain functions, there's a tendency to engage in, immoral behavior. When they hurt someone or cause damage, they usually will not offer an apology at all. If what happens to be an apology is offered, it is rarely beyond words and tends to include an element of distancing and minimizing. I made a mistake. Whatever. We're all human, right? The feelings of guilt and remorse are just missing because these emotional states are not within their capacity. Therefore, the typical contrition that would naturally follow when one caused harm to another is going to be absent. Their stance is typically move on, let it go. You're too sensitive. Why are you still talking about that? It's in the past. And that could be related to anything. They'll say that to anything. Why are you still upset about that? It could be something devastating. But to them, it's like, dude, shut up. It's done. You're talking. It's old news. Move on. But see, now, that level of damage, it's not something you're just going to jump over. It's impacted you now. It's hurt you. It's torn you down. But they're going to overlook that because that part doesn't matter to them. Now, as I mentioned before, another point here is that they have a presence of very high narcissism. And when I say that, remember the show from Monday, When You Dance with a Narcissist. Well, a lot of the points we brought up, well, it seems there's a lot of similar things here. But now, the psychopath, that is a narcissistic sociopath elevated to the very highest level. It's a scary, scary place to be in, especially if you intertwine in this with a romantic partner, man. And for those with primary psychopathy, it is in their nature to have an incredibly inflated, grandiose sense of self. I mean, most times very arrogant. They do not need or care about the approval of others. Any desire they have, or for control or worship, is associated with feelings of superiority, not insecurity. And unfortunately, for the individual with psychopathy, there tends to be no genuine interest in friendships. So a lot of times you'll notice there really is no friendships. Most of us can say, "Oh yeah, man, I've got my best friends. I've got those who are close to me." But these people, there really typically is none. They operate very much in kind of their own crazy superiority bubble. Now, as I mentioned before, you become kind of a fixture in their play. Everyone is assigned a role and has a use. You're my object. And that's a terrible place, because then, when that clicks in, and I've worked with people where all of a sudden the light bulb went off and they realized that metaphor, like, wow, like, I really am I'm an object. I'm an asset. I'm not a person. I'm a means. It's a rough place to be. It's a terrible thing to feel. These people, they have a strong need for power and control, and often place others in the role of just loser. Even those who demonstrate loyalty, trust, love towards them. Psychopathic individuals usually have a use for those they keep close, not a heartfelt connection. They consider some people just puppets who will defend them, agree with them, sacrifice their reputation to protect the psychopath. It is often their preference to have numerous puppets. For many with psychopathy, this role is also assigned to their loved ones, to their family, to their wife, husband, girlfriend, boyfriend, And next is immorality. Psychopathy is a disorder that has immorality as a core feature. So when there's immorality, harm to others tends to follow. It would not be uncommon for someone with this condition to have secret dual lives, pervasive hateful thoughts, consistent pattern of violating behaviors. An example includes, internet trolling, using children as pawns, abusing, bullying others, forcing other areas of sex or intimacy against somebody's will. I mean, these are all aspects that can fall in. Listen, a healthy, intimate relationship is extremely difficult to establish with an adult who seeks to control and demean another. Their lack of care or concern regarding the impact of their actions can further exacerbate the pain for their mate. It can be difficult for loved ones to move past their flippant manner of just inflicting harm. You start hearing those statements, well, he hurt me, or she hurt me, and they didn't seem to care. People will sit sometimes with just that thought. Man, they hurt me, but they didn't care. Like, they did this, but there was no remorse. There was no apology. There was nothing coming back out saying, I'm so sorry I did that. Because that's what the normal heart and the normal brain looks for, because that's a heartfelt human being. But when those things are missing, sometimes people are just, they'll excuse it, thinking it's just, they're just upset. They didn't say it because they're upset or whatever. No. Maybe start looking deeper, because maybe it wasn't there because it's not there, because it doesn't exist. Within relationships, the behaviors demonstrated by an individual with psychopathy can quickly create distance, anxiety, and a very strong power differential. Quite often, then, psychopathic relationships are traumatic for the non-psychopathic partner, and naturally, domination and control obstructs normal bonding for the person involved in these relationships. And instead, the type of bond created is one based on fluctuating abuse, dependency. It's a trauma bond. And this form of intense attachment can be difficult for the non-psychopath partner to break, thereby placing him or her in a very unsafe and very dysfunctional relationship. Now, these are always kind of hard topics to go into because I've had many people over the years, they'll hear the differences and sometimes it'll make things click. And before I move, I am going to let the stage open up for you guys that want to come up here and share something, ask a question, bring a topic. But I am going to say this. If you're stuck or you're in this kind of a relationship and you need help, I'm going to encourage you to reach out. You don't have to stay in that, and don't. Reach out to somebody. Let somebody know what's going on. Reach out to a professional. Reach out to a confidant who you trust, but don't stay in an unhealthy environment like this because it will break you down to a point that will be a misery that you do not want. And I don't want that for anybody. Deanna, happy Wednesday, happy hump day. How are you?
I'm great. So I have a question on this topic because I'm suspect of someone, and you know, I don't, I would assume that I might not be right about this. That a lot of people who have this or have whatever, I don't know if it's called a condition, whatever, but okay, so they're suffering from psychopathy.
Psychopathy,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so let's call it that. I would guess they might not often be diagnosed as such because they don't really see the problem in themselves.
Right.
So I'm not sure about that. But anyway, this raises a question: do you see like a cycle, especially like in intimate or romantic relationships? Do you see a cycle of, say, a 2-year period? When you reach that point. I know, that honeymoon phase of a relationship, and then you reach that point where those things start to kind of wane and die off a little bit, and at that moment, then things become a little bit more clear. Do you see a cycle in these relationships? Because the person that I'm thinking of tends to have this 2-year cycle. Every now and then it goes a little bit more, but for the most part, it's about 2-year cycle, and it just throws people away.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if that's a pattern.
It is a pattern. I mean, and the pattern can be obviously different for each person, but remember now with the differences between primary and secondary. Okay, there are some pretty hefty differences here in the sense that a primary psychopath is they're going to have you'll see more of a regular cycle with them, and and again they're going to be great in the beginning. Oh my God, it seems like love. It's kismet. The stars are booming. Okay, but then it's you got to look at the non-psychopath person in the relationships. Okay, because what's going to happen? You'll see a cycle with them too. It's somebody that may have had high confidence in the beginning, have a lot of resources, whatever, and then all of a sudden, all that's gone. They're depressed. They're anxious. They're stressed. The honeymoon's over, and now the psychopath person, well, they're looking at it like, well, my resources are running out. Time to move on.
Yeah.
So and so because when there's not when and this is true for primary or secondary, but when a psychopathic person all of a sudden does not have the level of control or the level of supply that they had before, well, you're obsolete. You're disposable. It's time to like restock with somebody else, so they'll start gearing up for the next cycle.
And that's interesting too, because in this particular situation, um, there was an instance where, like, so the cycle went this 2 years. They kind of broke up.
Mm-hmm.
Then they wound up getting back together.
Mm.
And then it went for another 2 years, or not quite 2 years. But then the guy noticed, like he realized this, and he was like, "I'm out." And she went ballistic because she wasn't the one who ended. Like, I've never seen a relationship that she didn't end.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
she was always the one who ended it. And when
Yeah.
he was like saying she was in his house, and he was like, "No, you got to move." It She went crazy.
Yeah.
Like, cops called.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, like, it was. Anyway, yeah. I mean, without being able to diagnose someone,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm basically saying, like, yeah, probably,
Right.
like, that primary thing. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is too, like, and again, it's now I'm going off of surface details you're sharing to kind of answer your question, but yeah, there, you have to picture that there really is. There's you got your primary psychopath, you've got your secondary psychopath, you have your narcissistic sociopath, and then you have your true narcissist. Well, there's a lot of similar traits in these. So the thing is that, I mean, for example, some of the things you stated, well, a narcissistic sociopath, they can be in that scope where, like, if they lose control, if they lose that manipulation factor, oh man, well, no, that's not right. That's not how the play is supposed to be. You're not following your script.
Right.
I need to be the one to break up.
Right. But in a place of sociopath, like you said, in narcissistic, is there a level of empathy there, or no?
Well,
Like,
no,
I feel like the emotions are almost always
yeah, the emotions are not there.
act.
Yeah,
Okay.
but with a psychopath, it's even more so. Like,
Right.
with a psychopath, like, it truly, there is never a point. Like, a narcissist, okay, can be made to feel something from an emotional standpoint on certain areas, okay. Even if it's anger or whatever, it's still a genuine emotion. Whereas a psychopath, sometimes they really truly are void of a lot of this. So anything that you see is what they've created. It's a made up. It's a made up place. It's a fake
Right. It's
place.
a play. It's an
Yeah.
act. Well, and then the other question then comes in, like, so she has a kid, and so how does that impact with raising a kid? She actually seems to be really, really good, as a parent, like, as far as being supportive and being there for, get the homework done, do all the things, play the games, super creative,
Okay.
things. So, like, really good with the kid seems to be, she does use him as a pawn between the two parents, but,
Yeah.
she seems to be, other than that, which I don't know, I feel like is a response to the partner, not the kid.
Right. And
She seems to be a decent mom.
right. And see, and that, I mean, and that right there, a lot of times, the especially, and I'll talk back about a primary psychopath. A primary psychopath might go through the functions when need be to be that good parent, but that's not really their focus and concern. Their focus and concern is still going to remain pretty much on their world and what they have going for them, and to manipulate that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times, though, with a narcissist, well, a narcissist can totally be in that capacity to turn around and be a great parent. But it's sometimes, and it is horrible to say, but sometimes it's the case. But for example, mom stays very close to the child, is doing a great job as mom, because that gives her consistent leverage over dad. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, as long, the kid's always gonna be, oh no, me and mommy are so close, and that kind of thing. So
Right.
that whenever,
When it gets to a certain age, probably. Yeah.
right, exactly, but it keeps that pawn aspect going. Now, I'm not saying that's the case in your situation. I'm just saying, but that is something that can happen in that kind of dynamic, especially when children are involved. And if you see that the person you would suspect being a narcissist or a psychopath is just all of a sudden really, really great with the kids, well, a lot of times there's a reason behind that, because that kid is a very important position in that play.
Right. Interesting. All right. I appreciate it. That's a lot to think on, but
Yeah, definitely.
and I mean, I'm not looking to diagnose this person's not really the person in my life. but
Right.
it's just that, she is in my circles. And so I'm like, it's curious to kind of be able to, maybe even in relationships, know how to approach it, so that you can, like in that situation, I feel like if then you know what you're approaching, you might be able to approach it in a way that, everything works out, everything is good for everybody, so that
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
suffer and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna. And yeah, listen, guys, I want to stress this to you for sure. Now, I mean, if you're already in the relationship, okay. If you're in between relationships, if you're coming out of a bad relationship, let me tell you something. I don't care how hot he is, how hot she is. Take the time to really gain an understanding of somebody's history. Take the time to actually have the conversations that are going to matter. The conversations that are going to matter to whether or not you're about to invest your time, energy, heart, emotions with somebody. Take the time to really see what it is you're investing in. I understand that sometimes the power struggle of being alone, you don't want to be alone, and somebody pops up and they might be, man, they're so similar to my ex. But you know what's better, being alone? Is it? Is it better than being alone? Is it better to go back into an emotionally devastating, demeaning, devaluing, degrading relationship with somebody just so you have somebody to occasionally sit on the couch with and watch Netflix? I don't think so. Take the time, people. We're not designed to go out there and just endure absolute destruction in our relationships. And we don't want to go out and be the destructive force in our relationship. A relationship is meant to be a supportive aspect on both ends. But when you encounter narcissists, psychopaths, and all of these things, well, listen, there's resources, there's information. Learn from it. And sometimes we don't want to see it. We don't want to see it. We sometimes those red flags will pop up, and you know we'll pull that spray can out, color them blue for a little while, make it a little prettier, so we can deal with it some more. But that's not going to help you. And these kind of relationships and these kind of people, they don't care if they hurt you. They don't care. It's not even in their record. It doesn't matter. But guess who it does matter to? You. Guess who it will matter to? Your kids. Be aware. Be attentive. Be focused. Take care of you. All of this is about making you and us more. This is about us becoming more self-aware of, sadly, the world we live in and the people that we are going to cross paths with. I mean, my goodness. I if I if I had to sit and make a list of the amount of people that I do therapy with, that the reason they're in therapy is because they have not let the light bulb click on the one aspect of, I am not going to be abused, not emotionally and not physically. I'm not going to be degraded. I'm not going to be torn down. I'm not going to have it. They missed that part. Light bulb hadn't gone off. So they go from one abuse of relationship to the next abusive relationship to the next. I mean, it's a train wreck cycle, man. It's a train wreck cycle. Elizabeth on the back end says, agree with taking the time to know what your valuable time will be invested in. Absolutely. Don't want an unhealthy repeat relationship. That's right. And why do we? Why do we want that? We've talked about this a lot, about the fact that, well, it becomes a situation where it becomes people's norm. And listen, this is not your norm. It's not. Don't Being with a psychopath is not your norm. Being with a narcissist is not your norm. Don't make it that way. Give yourself some time. Sometimes it's going to be hard because that's what you've made your normal. That's what's made you feel complete. That's what you've been in a relationship. Well, good for you. Now, sadly, you might need 10 years of therapy after the fact. Not good for you. And we're going to encounter it. People have shared my story before. I was in one of the most horrible relationships I could have ever imagined myself being in. I remember talking to some of my best friends. I was like, dude, how'd you miss this one? You're a psychologist, for fuck's sake. How'd you miss this? Because I'm human, and because we can sometimes get lost in an idea of something. And I did. I got lost in an idea of something. I got stupid. I got slack is what I did. Now that's me. I'm talking about my own personal experience, but I'm saying it was horrible. It took me time. I had to process through, and in that time, I wasn't running out trying to date people. I wasn't running around trying to have another relationship. That's one thing I did learn. Take the time. It's good to take space between relationships. It's healthy to take space between relationships because it gives you time to actually grow. It gives you time to actually strengthen yourself to learn what the hell you just came through. And oh my God, I'm not doing it again. That's why we take a space. Not because everybody's out here trying to support, no, you need to be alone. Screw that. Well, yeah, I mean, being alone sometimes is healthy. But it's temporary. You don't have to be alone forever, but be alone for a little bit. Take stock in what you're doing. Look at your investment. I like how you worded that, Elizabeth. Look at your investment. But yeah, guys, listen. Your heart, your love, your compassion, your happiness, your support, those are valuable things. Valuable things. And a psychopath will drain you dry. So will a narcissist. They'll drain every amount of that out of you if you let them. So don't let them. Don't let them. Guys, I want to thank you so much for being in here. This was part 3 of part 5. Part 3 of a 5-part series, rather. And so yeah, please be back here tomorrow and Friday, 11:30 a.m. Also, I'm really excited. I want to make you guys aware of something. So me and the Real Skinny, we've been talking kind of on the back end and everything, and so we've come up with a show that we're going to do. We're going to have a music guest. We're going to talk about music topics. We're going to talk about just bringing in psychology with entertainment, but just the importance that it's going to be a really great show. We're hoping to do this every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern, and our first show is going to be this Saturday. So I'm excited about that, and I also want to mention. Thanks for that. Yeah, I really am. I'm so excited about it. And then next Wednesday, I've been invited by Dave and so forth to be on the Married Couple podcast. So I'm going to be a guest on their show. I'm looking so forward to that as well. That's going to be on Wednesday night. So yeah, lots of good stuff coming up. And man, there's so many excellent, just valuable creators on this community. I love Fireside so much. I do. I thank the goddess every day that the doors kind of opened up for this, because it's truly been it's helped me. I love it. I love sitting in. I've loved meeting you guys, hearing what you guys bring to the table. It's epic. It's beautiful. This is definitely the space that when you're in here, you need to invite people in here, because there is good bits of stuff that we get to take into ourselves and use and strengthen ourselves and grow. It's all right here. It's like a smorgasbord of just healthy, great stuff, and I love it. All right, that's my spill. And I love you guys. Have a very blessed rest of your Wednesday. It is hump day. We've made it halfway. Let's continue on and rock it out. All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow.